This is part 3 of a 3-part series of videos on research intended for both undergraduate and postgraduate medical professionals interested in carrying out research as part of their professional development.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the TheSynapse e-learning series. This is the conclusion of our 3-part series on how to conduct research. And with us today we have Prof Joseph Cacciottolo, who's going to be speaking to us on how to present your research. Thank you, Profs, for accepting our invitation here today. We're glad to have you on board.
No, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I think first of all, we have to address the issue of what kind of presentations that we'll be talking about in a medical context. I think the most basic one is a case report. As medical students, we're all invited to present our cases. And then as junior doctors, it increases in complexity. So that's probably the first encounter with a research project and the presentation of such. Then probably we move on to a series of cases that we would like to present as a group, as a unit, and perhaps do the review of the literature on such cases. Then we might review the literature. We might be asked to review an article, some paper or a topic. Then we might be asked to have a look at an audit cycle and present our findings of this audit cycle. And finally, we might have to present research about data that's available and about data that we have generated or our team has generated.
So presentation is a key aspect in basically all types of research, from the simple case study to actually the research which involves scientific findings.
I think it's a crucial part, it's the final part. I mean, it's useless doing research and putting your findings in a drawer. You have to present them to your colleagues, to the scientific community at large.
And from your experience, what are the main difficulties which we encounter in doing this?
It's often the most stressful part of our work, and the most stressful part of our work is sometimes because we sometimes lack the confidence to speak in public, and that comes from experience. It depends who our mentors are. If you're a junior doctor and you have a consultant who guides you well, then things are easier. Whereas if you're left on your own, then swimming and building up your confidence is more difficult. There's also another problem, I think another difficulty is how to condense your research. Preparation for what you're doing takes sometimes months or years. Your research takes months or years. So it's quite difficult and stressful to trim it down to the right size for presentation. And another stress is to organize what you purport to present in a topic, in a specific presentation, or indeed in a paper. I think you have to consider also your audience. That's a difficulty that sometimes people fail to address. What is your audience? Is your audience an audience of specialists? Is your audience an audience of generalists? Are other professions in the audience? Are there lay persons in the audience? Because that's quite critical when you want to pitch the level of your presentation.
So your presentation, the priority of your presentation, the aspects which you must basically present depend directly on the audience. And I can mention different types of audiences, as you already mentioned correctly. But what, in practical terms now, in a stepwise approach, how does the presentation method vary according to the audience which you want to address and according to the aim of your research in particular? And
also in terms of the way you want to project it. I think there are two very major divergences. One is the written presentation, and the other one is the viva voce presentation. The written presentation, the most basic presentation, is the poster presentation. And information here has to be condensed, highly condensed, often in terms of points. Your poster has to be very eye-catching. Sometimes your poster is one of many posters, sometimes one of hundreds of, in large conferences, yours is one of hundreds of posters. So it has to be eye-catching, especially for people who are sauntering around in the corridors between these masses of posters. And if it's an eye-catching poster, it's a clean eye-catching poster, then people will tend to stop. Use graphics, in terms of posters, use graphics as much as possible. A pie chart and the bar graph is worth more than 1,000 words. So it'll make it visually attractive as well. And also, when you're preparing a poster, you should be ready to discuss the poster. A lot of poster sessions will include a walk around the posters, and the coordinator will invite you to say a few words about your poster. Yes, usually it's 3 to 4 minutes, no more, no less. But also be prepared for people who'll come individually afterwards and ask you about your work. People who are maybe interested or are doing work of a similar nature. Then I think we have to move to papers beyond posters. And here I think one has to decide early on your target. And your target, I mean, which journal do you intend to disseminate your findings? You've got to check very, very early the flavor of the journal. And is this very specialized work? So really, would it be targeted to a very specialized journal? Is it a general work that could be posited into a general medical journal, or has got a local flavor? A lot of research that's generated in this country is extremely valid, and it's extremely important for this country. But it has little importance to somebody who's living on a global level. So,
even on a regional level.
Absolutely, but at a local level, because it comes from this milieu and it explains a problem that is prevalent locally, then it's very valid. Then with a paper, you have very little choice. With a poster, you have quite a few choices of formats. But with a paper, you have little choice, because if you've decided on journal A, then you've got to very slavishly follow the instructions of journal A if you want it published. There's no leeway here. You want that journal, that paper published in that journal, you've got to follow their instructions, and you have to follow it to the letter. What if your paper is rejected? This happens quite often to all of us. But do not despair, because you can use this rejection as a learning process itself. It's a challenge and a learning process itself, because the comments that the referees send you back will help you make your paper better, and when you present it to perhaps another journal. But also when your paper is rejected, I think you should stand back and perhaps discuss it with a trusted colleague, because there might be things that you are missing, and perhaps you haven't been objective enough. Whereas a trusted colleague who can give you objective advice can put you on the right track.
And that gets us back to what you were saying earlier on. You must see who your target audience is. It's
Yes.
not actually the journal which makes your paper, worthwhile, but the audience which you're planning to deliver.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you might be invited to write something for a newspaper. Mm-hmm. And that's a different kettle of fish altogether, because the style has to be different. You have to move away from from the scientific language, which is often very heavy and technical in a journal. And the audience, of course, here is much more varied. The style has to be lighter. It has to be a journalistic, very readable style. And I don't think I would go very deep into technical details. Here you have to use a lot of graphics and perhaps a lot of pictures as well.
Exactly, so you have leeway to make it more attractive and eye-catching, the same as we were saying for the poster presentation, but obviously in a different method of delivery.
Yeah, and again, it depends on the newspaper or the journal or the magazine. If it's a slightly more specialized magazine, then it's a different issue. But if it's a popular newspaper, then of course you have to, your language and your style will have to be different. And then, of course, we have to move to the viva voce presentations, which scare everybody really initially until one gains the confidence. I think the first viva voce presentation that we all asked to do is a case presentation, perhaps, and to your peers, to a small group of people, and perhaps a larger presentation in terms of case presentations or a series of case presentations at a conference to a larger group. But they are the easier. The literature review and the case presentations are the easier. If you're presenting your own research, then of course, you know, you've got to be much more technical in your presentation. The majority of the presentations need slides as an adjunct, and the slides are useful for two reasons. The first reason is because they help you and they help to pace you, and also because it helps the audience. There are two golden rules with respect to slides, two very basic rules with respect to slides. Do not read the slides. A mistake that a neophyte would do is to turn one's back to the audience and read the slides. And another one, of course, the other golden rule is never give your back to the audience. PowerPoint presentations are the most common formats. However, there are other formats, but the principle remains the same. And I'll just want to discuss a few principles in terms of presentations. You should spare no effort, absolutely, to prepare the slides. You know, take your time, prepare your slides very early so that you're not rushed. Seek advice. If you're not confident with the format, if you're not confident with what you're going to do, seek advice and help if necessary. Not just advice, but help. Your slides will have to be extremely well designed and professional looking.
And I'm noticing here that you're saying design. You're not focusing mostly on words, which the slides contain, but they must also depict a graphical presentation of your research findings.
Yeah, I think we'll come to that in a bit.
That's a very valid point.
Yeah, sure. But yes, they have to be well designed because they have to be pleasing to the eye and easily understandable. The presentation serves to pace you. The presentation, the slides should be an adjunct to what you're doing. They should not take over the presentation. The presentation is yours and it is your show and not the slides. The slides are useful to put across very important statements and very little else. Once again, never read the slides because please do not assume that your audience cannot read. Everybody in your audience can read, so why read your own slides? The slides will have to be very clear, very easy to read, and relevant. Please do not use any fancy backgrounds or any special effects because they detract from the importance of your own presentation. It has to be, from a technical level, make absolutely sure that the slides have good contrast between the text and the background. So if you decide to use a very, very dark background, make sure that the text is very, very light, and vice versa. If your background is very light and white, then you have to use blacks and dark blues there. When you plan your slides, when you plan your presentation, make absolutely sure that the first points that you put down are the major concepts that you want to put across and the principal points of your presentation, and then you gradually work around them. So these would be the pillar of your presentation, and then you gradually fill in. Do not make the mistake of having too many slides. Perhaps one slide a minute is not such a good advice, but perhaps a slide every 2 minutes will pace you very, very well, and will allow you to go into the text and explain, and using your own words and using your own flavor for the presentation as well. Practice in advance, and practice in advance not only in terms of diction, but also in terms of timing as well. Sometimes it's useful when it's a major presentation to have a group of friends around you and to give a dummy presentation so that they can be critical in a private and in a friendly way.
The objective eye again is so
yes. Have somebody criticize you, somebody who can objectively criticize you and kindly criticize you. Finally, the conclusion of your presentation has to be clean and neat. There should be one final slide which gathers everything together, so that your conclusion is good, your message is good and effective.
And your take-home message now. I know that presenting a research, presenting any findings, because we're not particularly speaking only on research, but anything, literature review, has its ups and downs, as you're well aware, but in the end, the disadvantage is that most of us who are listening here today are either starting this or else want to brush up on their technique. So the tips and tricks are there, especially with regards to giving a PowerPoint presentation or slide. Your take-home message now.
I think we all can have a research mentality. It starts early in our medical years, but this can be also an integral part in our work as doctors. Some excellent research have come out from databases from family doctors. So one can have a research mentality. And then, of course, is the satisfaction of having your work published and being disseminated. You start by something simple or join a group of like-minded people. And then you have to be confident. Probably you know more about the subject when you're talking about your subject. Probably you know more about the subject than your audience. So be confident about it. And it's not only an opportunity to present your own work, but also it's a learning experience as well here. And no matter how senior a person is, we're always learning.
Thank you, Prof Cacciottolo, for your time. Thank you, the audience, for listening in to this series, and we hope that by providing you with this information, we're helping you present your research and conduct research more effectively and efficiently. Thank you for your time.